Alright, hi, I'm Kimmy and I'll be talking about the rape crisis in India. Okay, so I just wanted to present my thesis and just present about what I'd be talking about. So my stance on it is that I believe the laws should be changed in order to make this better and the law should be enforced properly. I believe that women will continue to be assaulted and killed in India if nothing happens or if maybe someone doesn't step in and try to solve these problems. And then I just posted the link to these photos below. These are some photos of protests that women put on in New Delhi because there was a couple of very serious crimes there regarding sexual assault. So these women were putting on some protests because of those sexual assaults. So the major points I'll be making in the presentation, I'll be talking about the crisis itself and just explaining to you guys about a little bit of what it is because me personally, I didn't even know about this crisis until I began researching on it. So it's going a little bit under the radar. I'm going to offer some possible explanations as to why it's happening, and then I'll be talking about Indian laws and restrictions, and then I'll just touch on some major news stories that kind of put people in just really upset people because there were some pretty big news stories on it. So to start, I'll just be explaining about what the crisis is. So according to The Guardian, every day there are 92 women being raped. And then also, according to the Daily Beast, a woman is raped every 15 minutes in India. And then just some numbers for all for you guys. This was a little consensus that India did. In 2011, 24,206 women were raped. In 2012, 24,923 women were raped. 2013, 33,707 women were raped. And in 2014, 37,000 women were raped. So as you can see, as the years went on, it did get significantly higher. So there is a general disrespect for women. So in India, more so or less the caste system, women are just viewed as more of, they're just less respected than men are, and they're viewed lower on the totem pole than men are. And then also Indian laws make the situation much worse, and I'll touch on that a little bit in a slide or two. So I wanted to go over why this is happening, and this is more so the explanations that I'm offering. So according to all this information was found on the Daily Beast. One thing that I found was the skewed sex ratio. So in India, they have a massive imbalance between men and women. So for every 100 women, there's 112 men. So they do have a slight increase in men than they do women. Some researchers call this the bare branches phenomenon, which it's a female feticide, which is means that they're killing female fetuses, kind of like in China. So if you guys are familiar with that, China prefers male fetuses over women fetuses. Same with India, they do the same thing. And this is just because boys are more culturally preferred over girls. And so one thing that researchers really wanted to find out after finding out this fact was, why does China do the same exact thing as India, but why is India having such an intense rape crisis while China isn't struggling with this same crisis? So they kind of went into some research, and one thing they tested on was the same thing I brought up earlier, the Indian caste system. So women are just placed lower than men. Men are generally more respected than women. Women are seen more as objects, and wives are seen more as objects than men are. Religious scriptures have disrespected women. I found a quote that I wanted to read for you guys. It's from the Mahabharata, book 13, section 40. It's, "There is no creature more sinful than woman. She is poison, she is snake." So kind of just trying to give a little, can you touch the screen because it's starting to go back? I'm sorry. So just a little scripture to show you guys that it has been an Indian tradition, and that's in a religious scripture as well. So just kind of showing that women haven't always been respected. And then lastly, there's Hindutva mythological tales that tell tales of sex and glorified rape. There was one in particular that I found that was also on the Daily Beast. They were talking about how this woman thought she was having sex with her husband, and it was actually someone else, and that man was glorified for pretty much raping her because it wasn't her husband, so it was viewed as that she was doing something wrong, but he was glorified for doing something right. So that was a little mythological tale I found on Daily Beast. I was like, oh my gosh, so that was kind of crazy. And then I'm going to talk about Indian law more specifically on the next one, just because I think for us, these laws are absolutely crazy because we have nothing like this, so I really wanted to go into specifics on it. So according to Huffington Post again, men are allowed to force sexual acts on wives without the wife's permission. The exact thing, I found it, it's the Indian Penal Code from 2013. It's an amendment from 2013. Sexual acts by a man with his own wife, the wife not being under 15 years of age, is not rape. So a man can force some type of sexual act on his wife, and as long as she's over 15, it's not considered rape. So I thought that was insane, and I that's why I wanted to do a separate slide on it, just because, I mean, in America this is like outrageous, so I wanted to talk about that. So according to Newsweek, officers receive little to no training for situations like this, so they're not really given training on, like, say, example, if someone reports a rape and the officer comes to the scene, they're not given proper training on like how to collect semen samples to go send it to testing, or they're not trained on how to handle the woman and how she's reacting and how she's presenting herself. They're just not receiving training on that how they should. And they also have few supplies, so they don't have the bags to collect the samples. They don't have the proper lighting, the black lights that show like the semen sample, stuff like that. They're just not receiving the proper supplies that they should be. And then I also found something, about a third of sex crimes that go to trial actually end in convictions, but prosecutions often take years. I found upwards of 10 years on Newsweek, because the court system is so overburdened with all of these crimes. So while a woman can report a rape and get it into the system, the actual prosecution of the man can take up to 10 years just because the court system is so overburdened with these crimes. And then also there's just a really low case of conviction incarceration, which I just said. I found that on Newsweek. So again, just men can be reported, but it takes a very long time, which I can imagine is very frustrating for a woman who's reported something and is waiting and upwards of 10 years I saw. So I thought that was kind of crazy as well. And then I wanted to go into, like I said, some specific cases that kind of shocked the system. So the Nirbhaya gang rape. This was in New Delhi on December 16, 2012. I found this on Indian Express. So she was a female paramedic. She was a 23-year-old. She was very young. She was a medical student. She was getting on the bus with a male friend who was about the same age as her, and she ended up being gang raped and pretty viciously brutalized. And her male friend objected, tried to help stop it, and he ended up getting brutalized as well. And then so she was gang raped and then thrown off the bus. And then I think it was on December 29th, she later finally died from her injuries because the injuries were just so intense from it. And then I found on the Harbor Gazette that 4 men were later sentenced to death because of it. So a lot of people were, I don't want to say rejoicing over what happened to her, but rejoicing because these men were finally found guilty and prosecuted and sentenced to death for this. So this was a pretty major case that I found. Pretty much every article I looked through had some mention to this because it was finally a case that really made international ground and sentenced the men to death. So I found that one. I wanted to talk about that one. And then I also want to talk about Sunil Rastogi. He was arrested in January, just this January, for sex crimes. I found that on Newsweek. He was a 38-year-old father of 5 that they found guilty of a sex crime. And once he was in holding, he actually confessed to over 500 counts of sexual assault. And since 2004, he's been arrested at least 15 times on similar charges, but he's never been officially convicted of those charges. And investigators found links to him to 58 sex crimes across at least 3 states within India. So, and he still has not been punished. He still hasn't been given an exact sentence, a death sentence, anything. So it just kind of shows how ridiculous this is that since 2000, like I said, since 2004, he's been found guilty of these crimes and been linked to crimes, and he still hasn't been officially punished. So, in conclusion, I just think that something really needs to be done, whether it's a neighboring country trying to step in or laws just really need to be tightened. Officers need better supplies, better training. Something needs to be done. Women's voices do need to be heard, and they have, like, I had the pictures up earlier. They've been protesting it. I just really think that their voices need to be heard and the laws need to be strengthened because for here it goes under, I think for us it goes under the radar because like I said, I didn't even know about this until I started looking into it. So it's just kind of, it's a major thing. With the numbers that I read off, it's pretty intense. So that's why I chose it to present on because it's a pretty major thing.
Timely topic too. Just last week, one of public protest against the fact that he was arrested. Not that he did the rape.